Most people recognize Medusa immediately. The snakes, the gaze, the face that turns anyone who looks at it into stone. In modern culture, she is often treated as one of mythology's most famous monsters. But something about this story raises questions. Because Medusa was not just a creature defeated by a hero, she was also a symbol placed on shields, temples, armor, and ancient objects. Her face could represent danger, but it could also represent protection, and depending on which ancient source we follow, Medusa's origin changes dramatically. So the real mystery is not only what Medusa did. The deeper question is this: why did ancient storytellers need Medusa to become a monster? In Greek mythology, Medusa was one of the three Gorgons. Her sisters were Stheno and Euryale, but Medusa had one crucial difference: she was mortal. That single detail made her vulnerable, and it made her the target of Perseus. In the familiar version of the myth, Perseus was sent to retrieve Medusa's head. With divine assistance, Perseus avoided looking directly at her. Instead, he used a reflective shield to approach her safely. After Medusa was killed, her head retained its power and was later associated with Athena's shield. On the surface, this sounds like a classic hero story. A dangerous monster exists. A hero receives a quest. The hero defeats the monster. Order is restored. But Medusa's story does not stay that simple. Because in ancient myth, monsters are rarely just monsters. They often represent boundaries between human and divine, beauty and terror, civilization and chaos, protection and destruction. And Medusa stands directly at the center of those contradictions. One of the most important things to understand is this: Medusa's story did not begin as one fixed version. In earlier Greek traditions, Medusa appears as one of the Gorgons. She was part of a group of terrifying supernatural beings associated with a deadly gaze, strange features, and ancient symbolic power. In this older version, Medusa is not mainly presented as a tragic woman transformed into a monster. She belongs to the world of the Gorgons from the beginning. This matters because many people today know Medusa through a later emotional lens. They imagine her as a beautiful woman cursed into monstrosity. But that was not the only ancient way of understanding her. Earlier images of Gorgons were often grotesque, powerful, and direct. The face could appear with wide eyes, a protruding tongue, tusk-like details, and an intense stare. These features were not random. They were meant to confront the viewer. The Gorgon face looked back. And in ancient visual culture, that mattered. A normal image might be observed passively, but the Gorgon face seemed to reverse the relationship. It did not simply sit there as decoration. It stared outward. It challenged the viewer. This may explain why the image of Medusa's head became more than a mythological reference. It became an object of symbolic power. Then the story changes. In a later version, Medusa is described differently. She is no longer only a supernatural figure from the beginning. She becomes connected to beauty, transformation, and tragedy. In this version, Medusa begins as a beautiful figure before her transformation. That detail changes the emotional weight of the myth. the story no longer feels like a simple tale of hero versus monster. Transformation becomes central. And with that transformation comes a new question. Was Medusa originally imagined as a monster? Or was she later reinterpreted as a tragic figure? The answer is difficult, because mythology is not a single book with one official version. Myths changed depending on time, place, poet, audience, and cultural need. A Greek storyteller could emphasize Medusa's terrifying power. A Roman poet could emphasize transformation and tragedy. A modern reader might emphasize injustice, identity, or survival. Each version reveals something, not only about Medusa, but about the society telling the story. That is why Medusa remains so powerful. She is not locked into one meaning. She changes depending on who is looking at her. This is the central conflict of Medusa's myth. Monster, victim, or symbol. Each interpretation changes the entire story. If we read her as a monster, Perseus becomes the hero who defeats danger. The story becomes familiar. A threat appears, a hero rises, and the world is made safe again. But if we read Medusa as a victim of transformation, the story becomes far more complicated. Perseus is still the hero of the quest, but the meaning of that quest begins to feel less certain. And if we read Medusa as a symbol, she becomes something even more layered. A figure of fear, protection, punishment, and power, all at once. And there is another detail that makes the story even more interesting. Medusa's power did not disappear after her defeat. Her image remained powerful, and that image became connected to protection. This creates a strange contradiction. Medusa is dangerous, but Medusa protects. Medusa is defeated, but her power remains. Medusa is silenced, but her face keeps speaking. This is why her myth does not resolve cleanly. It leaves behind a symbol that refuses to stay in one category. And that may be why Medusa still feels so difficult to define. Medusa's myth survives because it contains a powerful narrative tension. She is both feared and used, destroyed and preserved, monster and warning, image and weapon. In ancient culture, the Gorgoneion could function as a protective symbol. That means Medusa's face was not only something to fear, it was also something people place between themselves and danger. This may be the most overlooked part of the story. The thing people feared became the thing they trusted for protection. Fear became defense. Danger became a shield. In that sense, Medusa is not simply a villain. She is a boundary. She stands at the edge of the known world, at the edge of human control, at the edge of beauty and terror. And perhaps that is why her image still feels modern. Because Medusa asks a question every culture eventually faces. When society calls something monstrous, is it always because that thing is evil? Or is it sometimes because it is powerful, unfamiliar, and difficult to control? That question may be one reason Medusa never disappears. The lesser-known truth about Medusa is that her story was never just one story. In some traditions, she was a monster from the beginning. In others, she became one through transformation. In ancient art, her face could terrify, but it could also protect. That is why Medusa remains one of mythology's most debated figures. She refuses to become only one thing. She is not only remembered because Perseus defeated her. She is remembered because her image survived him. And maybe that is the final irony of the myth. Perseus may have taken Medusa's head, but he did not end her power. He carried it forward, through the shield, through the image, through the story. And that may be why Medusa still holds our attention. The myth has ended, but the question remains. Her story still looks back at us.